Welcome back to Nifty 50 Photographers. Now in today's video I'm going to continue in this series of sort of fine art minimalism, and I'm going to go through some composition rules that will help you to compose your photos if you're trying to emulate this style. So without any further ado, let's get started. Our first photograph features some mesmerizing waves. They're not quite hitting the shoreline here, but I've composed it with them diagonally across the frame. Diagonals add a dynamic sense of movement and energy to your frame. They draw the viewer's eye through the scene, creating an engaging visual journey. Now be careful which way up you use them. If you try them going diagonally the other way around, you'll see it has a different effect. It's not drawing you into the scene quite the same. It can make you feel uncomfortable. So to use diagonals in your photos, look for natural elements, perhaps that are running straight across the scene, and turn your camera through 45 degrees. Or look for natural features that are running across at an angle in your scene. It might be something like a shoreline, a line of waves as I've used here, even a path or a roadway. Embracing diagonals can add depth and drama to your photos. Right, in this second photo, I've got a fisherman digging for bait on the beach, and what I've done here is isolate the subject. He's set against the vast backdrop. There's nothing around him to distract you in the image. So that's the secret of doing this isolation. Make sure there is no clutter around your subject. Make sure he's framed against something that's very plain, and that will help to emphasize that this is the subject of your photo. Everything else is just negative space around him. Isolating your subject helps convey the importance of the subject in the scene. It helps your subject to stand out. It works particularly well in this minimalist style of photo because I'm blurring the background and he's the only thing that's really in focus. I've kept a bit of the horizon, the buildings on the skyline in focus as well, just to add a little bit more visual interest and draw you into the background and that amazing sunset behind. But because he's the sharp bit of the image, it really emphasizes that he's the key subject, and it helps to form this sense of scale in the image. Using leading lines, when I composed this photograph, I had to think about how it was going to be processed. So this is taken from a beach north of Blackpool Tower, looking back to Blackpool Tower and the pier. And I had to imagine what was going to happen to the stuff in my foreground that would create a leading line back to the main subject, which was going to be the skyline with the tower and the pier in it. Now I had, if I show you the shot that this is developed from, there's a promenade and some groins and things, so I was using those in my imagination, imagining how they would be blurred to create a leading line back to the main subject. What you're trying to do is guide the eyes of the viewer back to your main subject using those lines. Those lines might not be fixed things like railway lines or roadways. They can be things that are of different contrast, which is what I've created here. So look for any linear elements when you're trying to compose your photographs. As I say, it can be just things that are of different contrast, and use them to create a visual pathway to guide where you'd like the viewer's eyes to go when they're viewing your photograph. The next photograph is a picture of Mary's Shell. It's a sculpture on the beach near Fleetwood. Just up and back from it, there was three other sculptures which were just big pieces of stone with like a porthole in them that you could view the image through. So this was a perfect opportunity to use that frame within a frame technique. By using that technique, you create a sense of intrigue and depth to your image, because there's a little bit hidden, so it creates that feeling of mystery, and then you see that subject in the background, so it's really drawing your attention into the key subject, because the surrounding frame is blocking out all the other stuff that might have been in the image to distract you. It adds layers to your composition and gives your viewers a sense of discovery. So you can use all sorts of elements to do this. It could simply just be a couple of branches in a tree, but also any architectural elements like I've used here, or windows, door frames, arches, all those sort of things. For my fifth and final image, I'm going to use the classic composition rule that I'm sure many of you know, and that's the rule of thirds. So I've simply positioned the dinghy in this photograph right on one of the intersections of the frame when you divide it up into thirds. Putting something on one of the third lines really creates a sense of harmony in your image. Now, quite often we'll want to do that with something like our horizon, but if you've got a key subject, then it's often good to place them on this intersection between two lines which form the thirds grid. And you can switch that grid on in your camera so that you can see it straight away when you're composing your photograph. And there you have it. I hope you found that helpful. Composing photographs is an art in itself, and mastering these techniques will elevate your photography. I think it's one of the hardest things in photography is to get the composition right. So it's something you should try and practice as often as you can. So whether you decide to use diagonals to create energy in your shot, isolating your subject to give it some impact, especially in vast scenes, incorporating leading lines to lead your viewer into the photograph, or framing within a frame to create some intrigue and mystery, or just using the rule of thirds to create some harmony and balance in your photograph, or even a combination of more than one rule at a time. But really, it's something you want to bear in mind at the time you're planning your photograph, even if that's just as you're bringing your camera up to your eye. Think about why you want to compose it this way. What's your photograph going to be at the end? Is it something that you want to create intrigue and mystery, or is it a scene that you'd like the viewer's eye to travel through to a particular destination? So remember, go out and have some fun with your camera and practice these techniques. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.